Hi, this is Walking and Talking Spirituality. Thanks for taking a walk with me. Today I want to talk about godly ambition and the fear of failure. If I asked you what you considered to be the life that God dreams for you to live, what would you say? Again, the obvious answers are is God desires for us to grow into the people He created us to be, persons who are continuously expanding into love for God and love for neighbor, even as we learn deeper levels about our own acceptance by God of ourselves, so that we can even love ourselves for God's sake. That's the big answer. But that doesn't mean that we sit back in a position of pious passivity. Because when we know that we're fully loved by God and when our lives are expanding in love, that means we're going to be actively engaging in the world and participating in God's mission of spreading that good news to other people too. And so again, what's God really put on your heart? And what's holding you back? And if you go back, depending on how old you are, let's say you go back to when you're 18, or if you're, or go back 25 years if you're well past the age of 18, and think about all the different things that you've had to learn, all the different achievements that you've had, and how you had to literally step up and step into all the different opportunities that have come for you, both professionally, personally, and even spiritually. And then ask yourself that question. What's the life of God's dreams look like for me? And friends, if your past is bigger than your future, I'm going to suggest you're probably not dreaming big enough, and you're probably playing it safe. And what I've noticed is that slowly stifles satisfaction, fulfillment, and real joy, the kind of joy that God wants us to have. And the reason that we stop is usually fear of failure. I remember when my daughter was a freshman in high school, she had won a starting spot on the soccer team, and my daughter had skipped a grade, so she's literally in an 8th grade girl's body competing against upperclassmen on the soccer field. And my daughter was pretty good. We worked really hard when she was younger and loved soccer, so we practiced all the time, so she was a really good player. And one of the first home games, remember the guys' soccer team was there, and my daughter did a really cool move. She was surrounded literally by 3 other girls, and my daughter, I think, was 82 pounds when she was a senior, and these 3 girls she was competing against for the ball were well over 100 pounds, so it looked like really a little person surrounded by 3 giants. And Katrina took the ball, won it against these 3 larger girls, put the ball right between one of the girls' legs, and basically the 3 girls ran into each other, and Katie went down the field. And the boys' soccer team went crazy, and they were just jumping up and down, and they started calling my daughter the little blonde freshman, because they didn't know what her name was. Well, what was interesting is that night my daughter had played fearlessly, ferociously, had a blast, doing exactly what you're supposed to do, taking all her skills, pushing it to the limit and just going for it. But once people started talking about her at school, what a great game she played, she struggled the rest of her freshman year at home games. She still played great on the road because nobody was there to watch her. But whenever there was a home game, she felt the eyes of everybody on her. And so she held back because she was afraid that she was going to look dumb or make a mistake in front of the people who had called her the little blonde freshman because they remembered something from her past. Can you relate? Have you actually hit something at some point, had some success, become known for something, and then you're afraid that you're not going to be able to take the next step? I know pastors who've preached great sermons who are then afraid that their next sermon is not going to be as good. I mean, you know the feelings, right? So I took my daughter out for our smoothie. And I diagnosed immediately. I'm like, look, you're just afraid you're going to mess up. So you've made your life small. And that's what you do. Whenever you're let failure win, you make your life a lot smaller than God wants it to be. I told my daughter, it's like you're playing soccer and you've shrunk the field to about 1/3 of the size. And I said, if you want to become the player that you've always talked about wanting to be, you got to play full field. And you got to be willing to go all the way to the edge of the field and possibly even fall off the field. Because that's how hitters play. That's how people that recognize that God has big dreams for them play. Because we're not afraid of failing. We're afraid of missing out on the adventure that God's offering us out of his grace, out of his love. And I told my daughter, I'm like, look, you got teammates, you got people that love you no matter what. So if you go off the edge and go beyond your skills or have a bad game, your teammates are still going to be there for you. Your coach is going to be for you there. I'm going to be there for you. As spiritual leaders, there's an analogy. Right? God doesn't want us to hold back in some kind of false, pious passivity position waiting for God to do everything. If God puts it on our minds, God's probably calling us to take action on that, even if it doesn't work. But what keeps us grounded on those things? It's pretty easy. Make sure you're surrounded with community. That's what I've emphasized with my daughter. You have a community around you that's going to support you when you make mistakes on the field. Be committed to getting back up and trying again. I always told my daughters when they played soccer, if you lose the ball, just get the ball back. It's that simple. Don't pout, miss a shot, take another shot. So get back up and then focus on spiritual disciplines. We stay grounded in the Word. We stay grounded in prayer. We stay grounded in journaling practices, all the different things that help us to shape us into the people that God created us to be. We can recover from failures when our vision doesn't work out or our plans don't work out. But don't cheat yourself out of trying and going for something big in your life because you're afraid you're going to mess up. Go back to the words of Joshua, be strong and courageous. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, remember, when you feel the fear of failure, you're going to have to show courage. But it's a courage grounded in community, a courage grounded in our spiritual discipline, a courage grounded on knowing that we're expanding every day in God's love. And again, courage doesn't feel good because we're pushing back against the fear that wants to make our life really small. So what's God put on your heart? What's holding you back? If you'd like to have a coaching conversation about your fears and the things that are limiting you, reach out to me, deepdivespirituality@gmail.com. But don't spend your whole life wishing you would have went for it. And don't spend your whole life worrying that somehow your future isn't going to be as big as your past. God's still going to give you big dreams, and you're never too old to step into a new dream. C.S. Lewis said something like that. Again, until next time, live by faith, be known by love, and be a voice of hope to others.